Thank you so much. I am really excited to be here today. Thank you to all of you who got up early to come back to see the results of the pitch competition. And just a few things for those of you who weren't here yesterday. Make sure that you are downloading did you already tell them this? Okay, so Jean's already done all of that. Before I introduce Kaya, I do just want to recognize, I don't know if Jean Eddy and the folks from ASA are here yet this morning, but Jean is the CEO of American Student Assistance, our lead sponsor this year, and has helped us in attracting sponsors. Thank you. It's all right. I can read off my phone, but I have to use the glasses. They have helped us in attracting sponsors, speakers, programming, including our final keynote later today, Tom Vander Ark. And I hope that all of you will stick around to see that. And I also know that Jean's chair, Larry Gennari, will also be with us during the day. And we want to thank all of the folks at ASA who have helped to make this conference such a huge success. I'm really excited to introduce Kaya Henderson. She has dedicated her career, as clearly all of you know, because you are sitting here waiting for her, to providing all children with the education, the support, and the opportunity to shape a better future. Growing up in a small blue-collar city without the best schools in the state that I did, I became committed to public education when I went to college and realized that opportunity was not evenly distributed. So I so admire her commitment to doing that work. She's done it as the Chancellor of the DC Public Schools, and having served in public office, I think I have the credibility to tell you, I believe that's one of the toughest jobs in public service. I'm looking forward to hearing her stories about that today. As you also probably know, she's continued doing that work today with her amazing work at Teach for All. And I hope some of you remember that earlier last year, in 2019, we tried to incentivize you to register early on Giving Tuesday. By committing to register early, we would make a donation to Teach for All on behalf of all of you. And I am thrilled to tell you that we're going to be making a $500 donation to Teach for All on behalf of all of you to continue the work that Kaya is doing at Teach for All. And I am thrilled to introduce Kaya Henderson.
Good morning. Woo, okay. Let me tell you where I'm coming from. I have been in San Francisco for most of the week and got on a red eye to be here. I got in at 5:30 this morning. And so I'm going to need a little bit more energy because we have to do this thing together. Is that all right? So let's try this again. Good morning. All right. And perhaps because I came in on a red eye and I'm a little bleary-eyed, I have a crazy idea. So I have a lovely speech that I've prepared, and I don't know, people have helped me prepare and whatnot. And I don't want to say it because one, like reading to you just doesn't turn me on, or you on probably. And I just want to have a conversation. And so the Learn Launch people who have been after me to come keynote for a couple of years, and this was the first year that I could actually make it, might never invite me back. But I think I'm just going to try to have a conversation with you. Is that okay? All right, super. So a little bit of background on me. As Jane said, my name is Kaya Henderson, and one of the best jobs that I've ever had in my life. I've had the pleasure of having a few really amazing jobs, but one of the best jobs that I've ever had in my life was leading DC Public Schools, first as Deputy Chancellor and then as Chancellor. Thank you. I'll tell you why it's important for me to start with that, and that is because, wait, first I should know what time. What time do I have until? Okay, because when you're not following your speech, you just start talking, and okay. So the reason why being Chancellor of DC Public Schools was one of the best jobs of my life, and why it's important for me to tell you that, is because all the time I would go places and introduce myself as Chancellor, and people would be like, "Oh my gosh, that is a really hard job. You know, you look pretty good for the Chancellor of DC Public Schools." And I was like, well, what am I supposed to look like? Am I supposed to look like I've been run over by a truck? But, and this is really important, how we talk about our jobs actually communicates a lot, right? Nobody wants to be a superintendent because we walk around talking about how hard the superintendency is and how terrible people treat you. And yeah, there's some of that. But there's also a tremendous amount of creativity and innovation. There's an amazing opportunity to work with lots of incredible people. You get to like figure out what kids need to know and be able to do. You get to be in community with lots of different folks, and I found the job to be quite exhilarating. And so I want any of you who are thinking about the superintendency to know that it is an amazing job. Don't be afraid of it. Run straight into it and do it. I say the same thing about teaching, which was my first career. I loved teaching. And the way we talk about teaching, teachers, the way you talk about teaching, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. This is the hardest job. Yes, it is the hardest job. And every day you have joyful moments. And if we want the world to start talking differently about the teaching profession, we have to start talking differently about the teaching profession. So I'm starting from the beginning. I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York, which is thank you, amen, which is a small suburb just outside of New York City. We are 4 square miles big, wide, long, I don't know, something. 4 square miles, and I don't even know how many people we have. But for this like little teeny tiny town, Mount Vernon was packed with talent. Dick Clark came from Mount Vernon. E.B. White came from Mount Vernon. Art Carney came from Mount Vernon. Denzel Washington came from Mount Vernon. His mother was my hairdresser when I was a little girl. P. Diddy comes from Mount Vernon. Who else? I don't know. Lots of people. Heavy D, if you follow. Lots of rap people came from, and R&B people came from Mount Vernon. This little teeny tiny town packed a powerful punch of really great people. And so I grew up in this place kind of surrounded by all of these amazing people with this deep tradition of like, you could go out and change the world. We had basketball players who were in the NBA. Mount Vernon still is one of an NBA powerhouse, right? And so this very teeny tiny place that nobody was really paying attention to, but I was surrounded by great people, and that communicated to me that like great people really mattered. As I told you, I started my teaching career in the South Bronx. I taught at IS 162. I left Mount Vernon. I went to Georgetown University, Hoya Saxa, best university in the country. You can't argue with me on that. And graduated with a degree in international relations, but I decided that while my friends were going abroad to help other people, I should stay here and help people before I go try to help other people. And so I joined Teach for America, and I taught middle school Spanish in the South Bronx. And it was an amazing experience because it was maybe 4 or 5 miles from where I grew up, but it might as well have been on the other side of the world, right? Demographically, my kids were all African American and Latino, but the South Bronx, if you know anything, is one of the poorest communities in the country. And so while me and my suburban friends in Lower Westchester were horseback riding and skiing and doing all kinds of other things, these young people mostly had never left more than a 10-block radius from where they lived. They had extreme economic pressures and all kinds of pathologies that you read about, but they were also pretty amazing and bright, and just like me and my colleagues growing up in Westchester. And I think more than the Spanish that I taught, more than the behavior management systems in my classroom, my favorite thing about teaching at IS 162 was lunchtime, because we played checkers. We played checkers in my classroom like it was celebrity deathmatch. Checkers, why checkers? Because lots of times we were locked in, we couldn't go outside for, neighborhood reasons, and kids need to blow off steam, and they could be running around your classroom or they could be exercising their mind, and so I figured buy a few, sets of checkers and have these folks engaged in checkers. And checkers were about strategy, checkers were about competition, checkers were about critical thinking, checkers were about a whole bunch of things. And the deal in my classroom was you played each other, and whoever by the end of the lunch period had beaten the most people got to play me, right? And beating the teacher was like a thing. And so every day at lunchtime, I would come down to it and have to beat one of my kids. And there was one little girl who, oh my gosh, the first time she almost beat me, I was like, I'm not sure, how I'm gonna deal with this, but I had to sharpen up my checkers game. And she actually beat me. And she reminds me of that. She's my friend on Facebook. And she reminds me of that all the time on Facebook. She's the only person to beat me. But what I learned from checkers is that when you put rigorous stuff in front of kids, they will rise to the occasion. Many of those kids had never played checkers before. By the time they left my classroom in year 1 or year 2, they were speaking Spanish for sure, but they were also super strategic. They were engaged. They were holding checker competitions for other kids. It was the checker thing. I think the third thing you should know about me, besides where I grew up and where I taught, is that the most influential person in my life was my grandmother. My mother's mother, Helen Henderson, was my best friend, my most formative influence, and was with me all the time because my mom was working. My mom was a teacher, right? So she was working late. She became a principal. She was working all the time. And so my grandmother was my main caretaker, and we spent a ton of time in what I would call forced community service. Going to the nursing home where she worked and entertaining the old people, or handing out baskets at Thanksgiving and Christmas, or I don't know, all manner of volunteer opportunities. Or I would be sitting in the back of a tenants association meeting where she's screaming and hollering about something or another and I'm doing my homework in the back. Or I'm at the union meeting because she was the shop steward for her union and I'm learning all about organized labor. And at the end of the day, literally what I couldn't stand is everywhere we went, people would be like, Miss Helen Henderson. So getting through the grocery store was super long because she had this whole community of people around her because she had done all of this kind of work. And I could actually end my talk right there because I've now just shared with you the 3 most important things that were our secret for success at DC Public Schools. The 3 things that helped us turn around what was the lowest performing urban school system when I got there in 2007 to become the fastest improving urban school district when I left in 2016, and which still is the case today, were 3 things. Great people, rigorous curriculum, and engagement with community. That's it. The end. Bye-bye. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit more. So when I say great people, when we got to DC Public Schools in 2007, we were coming, I say we because I came as the deputy chancellor under Michelle Rhee. If you followed the DCPS story, or if you were following education at that time, Michelle Rhee was a larger than life figure who kind of was gonna come in and save DCPS, I guess. I was along for the ride. But at the time, we had been working before we got to DCPS at the New Teacher Project. The New Teacher Project, many of you know, but is a consulting firm, a nonprofit consulting firm that started out by helping school districts think about and improve how to attract and retain great teachers. And so for me, for about 10 years, the New Teacher Project, all of our work was all around the country. In fact, one of our first contracts was here in Massachusetts, testing out the idea of performance bonuses, if you've heard of the Massachusetts Bonus Babies Project. We started that. We tested theories and did a lot of work to try to figure out how to get the best teachers, how to keep the best teachers, how to grow the best teachers. And so we came into this work at DCPS in 2007 thinking, okay, our theory of action is get, grow, and keep the best teachers. Get, grow, and keep the best principals. Get, grow, and keep the best central office staff. Human capital was our theory of action. And what was right about that was that the research says that the single most important in-school factor for moving student achievement is what? The quality of the teacher, absolutely. And we also knew that great teachers need to be in an environment where they are valued and supported, and usually that lands at whose desk? The principal. You're with me, thank you. Listen, come on, friends. And what we also knew from working in human resources departments all over the country was, in fact, when you had strong central office people, right, then your frontline people got to concentrate on their work and not have to worry about whether their benefits were right or whether their paycheck was on time or what have you. And so our whole entire theory of action was get great people. We re-engineered a very broken system, a system that literally, when on our first day in town, the headline was, "Can DC schools be fixed?" Yeah, welcome. But we literally faced a system that couldn't tell you how many teachers were in its employ, were routinely paying teachers incorrectly, not giving people benefits. We were the lowest paying district in our vicinity. And so that all but guaranteed that we were getting people who literally could not get a job anywhere else. And so the quality of our teaching force was compromised at best. In fact, when we looked at our performance evaluations, literally, it said that 90% of our teachers were meeting or exceeding expectations. Except we were the lowest performing urban school district in the country, and only 25% of our kids were reading or doing math at grade level. How does that work itself out? And so we embarked upon an ambitious set of human capital reforms. The first thing we did was fire some people. And we didn't even, let me just be very clear, right? Because we fired about 120 teachers. And literally, it was on CNN headline news. Why? Because nobody fired teachers at that time. And we didn't even fire teachers because they weren't good. We fired teachers who hadn't renewed their certification. We fired teachers who were absent for 100 of 180 days of the school year. We just did some really basic things, but it was a shock to the system because nobody ever expected to touch the sacred cow that our teachers, we love our teachers. But what we knew for sure was if we didn't ensure that we had the very, very best teachers, that we were not going to win, that we were not going to win for kids. And so what we did was a bunch of very ambitious human capital reforms. We created a new performance evaluation system. We created a new performance evaluation system called Impact. That, in fact, was one of the first in the country to tie teacher performance to student achievement. Now, you could like that or not like that, but I have a hard time explaining to a parent that a teacher's really good and their kids are not performing. Student performance wasn't the only metric. In fact, we had a variety of measures. And teachers were asking us, just tell us how you want us to teach. Because the textbooks say one thing, my principal says another thing, the standards say something else, the interim assessments say something else. Just tell us how you want us to teach. And so we put together a teaching and learning framework, and we evaluated people against that to let them know where they were. We didn't just leave them. We gave them deep professional development where we saw the need for improvements. Prior to that, our professional development dollars were going anywhere and everywhere. But in fact, with our teacher evaluation system, we were able to target our professional development to the areas where our teachers needed it most. And what did we see? Growth, significant growth. In fact, in the first year of our teacher evaluation system, 60% of the people who had been rated minimally effective moved into effective or highly effective the next year. We were like, wow, that's pretty good. How'd that happen? When we looked at the ones who moved versus the ones who didn't, the ones who didn't move didn't take the professional development that we offered. It was just that simple. And so we built systems like Impact. We built systems like LEAP, which was our professional development system. We put performance bonuses in place because we felt like if our teachers were knocking it out of the park with kids, that they should be appropriately rewarded. We changed our principals. We changed our central office staff. We instituted performance evaluations for everybody in the district because we wanted to be clear about what our expectations were and hold people accountable. We also recognized and rewarded people, not just through their paychecks, but publicly. In fact, last night was the 10th anniversary of an event that we hold every year in DCPS now called a Standing Ovation for DC Teachers, where it's at the Kennedy Center. It is tantamount to the Kennedy Center Honors. In fact, we call the guy who produces the Kennedy Center Honors and asked him to come and create a Kennedy Center Honors for teachers. And we have celebrities and bigwigs. Last night it was TLC, it was the entertainment. But teachers are excited to come to an event where they can be dressed up and with their families and recognized for the tremendous work that they do with our young people. So we double down on great people. And we talk to our people all the time. What do you need? What else do you want? And by talking to our people, what we figured out was we were getting great people, but our people were saying to us, well, we know what you want us to teach. We know how you want us to teach, but we don't know what to teach. Because, yeah, we're shooting towards the standards, but I don't know if what I am doing in my third grade class matches up with what other people are doing in their third grade class. We didn't have a standardized curriculum across DC public schools. And that was incredibly crazy when we had such a transient student population. Our kids moved all around the city all the time. And so if you were getting one thing in one third grade class and something radically different in another third grade class, that couldn't compute. We also really needed to set some standards to ensure that whatever we were offering, you were able to get it in every single public school. And so we did deep, deep work around curriculum. And not just academic curriculum, also extracurricular curriculum. That. And it's important because I think, we far too often lean on hardcore academics, but kids are more than reading and math and social studies and science. In fact, we had seen the narrowing of curriculum because of the emphasis on test scores. And what we wanted to show people was if you treat the whole child, if you provide academic opportunities and extracurricular opportunities that are both rigorous and joyful, that would both develop kids, not just their test scores, but their talents and their passion. I was a mom of 2 DCPS students, and I wanted my kids to be proficient in English and math. I wanted them to know history and social studies. I wanted them to understand science, and I wanted them to be exposed to art and music. I wanted them to have physical education. I wanted them to have opportunities to explore technology. I wanted them to go on field trips. I wanted them to go on study abroad trips. And so we created the kind of curriculum for our kids that I wanted for my kid or that you wanted for your kid. What I find far too often in the work that we do is we make different decisions for other people's kids. It's okay for other people's kids to just have math and reading. It's okay for us to cut out foreign language for other people's kids. Meanwhile, we're sending our kids to not just their Spanish class in school, but we're supplementing that outside. And so we decided at DC Public Schools that we were going to treat all of our kids like they were all of our kids. We put together a rigorous curriculum that's still in place today. In fact, the way the curriculum issue came up is because, as I told you, our teachers were telling us we didn't have one. And we looked around. This was right before the Common Core was about to take off. And we looked around to see what we could buy. And we saw lots of materials that were that had a sticker that looked just like the book before, but it had a new sticker that said Common Core aligned. And we said, we're not falling for that. And so we decided to develop our own curriculum. In fact, because we now knew who our best teachers were through our teacher evaluation system, we brought them together, we paid them for their time and their expertise, and we put them in teams and we asked them to develop curriculum. And over the course of 3 years, we developed new curriculum for every single grade level, every single subject area that was aligned to the Common Core reading, writing, and math standards. Thank you, curriculum lady. We also developed rigorous curriculum for art and music and PE and foreign language and technology. We made courses intersectional. One of our biggest and most exciting projects was this idea that we called Cornerstones, where in fact what we did was we asked teachers to create the most exciting lesson possible that kids would remember for a lifetime. It had to be interdisciplinary. It could not just be math or science or social studies. And we saw teachers come up with the most creative things. The thing that people have read about tons and tons is second graders riding bikes, right? We paid for every second grader to learn how to ride a bike. That wasn't the actual lesson. So the lesson was there was a social studies lesson called My Community, where in fact, second graders had to identify a bunch of different people and institutions in their community, learn about them, interview those people, et cetera, social studies. On the math front, they were learning graphing. And so they had to make a map, right, of the institutions and people that they met in their community. And the culminating activity then, in PE, they were learning bicycle safety. The signs, clearly I haven't been in second grade in a long time, the signs and how to maintain a bike and whatnot, and how to ride a bike. And so the culminating activity of this unit on community was a bike ride through the community following the map that they made to stop at all of the people that they had interviewed. The whole entire community came out and did this bike ride with the young people. And so we had these memorable things, creating frog biospheres and creating cell phone batteries. We had incredibly interesting and rigorous curriculum. And our teachers and our parents, in fact, we brought parents into the process, helped us create this. So I'll say one other thing about rigorous content, since this is sort of a technology conference. We actually utilize technology as an innovation, and the way we approach technology was, this stuff is all new. Let's see what works and what doesn't work. And so we incentivized people to try a bunch of different things. We made sure that whether it was iReady, or I should stop calling things out, right? Because I'm not gonna call out somebody and whatever. But we used a lot of different ed tech solutions. We had lots of different classrooms and schools trying them. But we were very rigorous and disciplined in evaluating their efficacy and abandoning things really quickly if they didn't work, and scaling things really quickly if they did work. We didn't over-rely on technology. We always saw technology as supplemental. In some cases, we were able to use technology to change the dynamics of a classroom. And I say that to say that technology, I think, allows us to do some really exciting things, but does not replace the relationship building, the deep experiential learning that happens in classrooms and amongst people. And so it's incumbent upon schools and systems to find the right marriage between technology and whatever else is going on in your school. Okay, I'm talking for a long time. Great people, rigorous content. Partnership with our communities. So one of the things that I knew coming into the chancellorship at DC Public Schools was that these were not my schools. Yep, I had lived in Washington, D.C. for more than 10 years by the time I started as chancellor. Yes, I was the person in charge and likely to get fired if anything went wrong, but these were not my schools. These schools belong to all of us. And so from the very beginning, my orientation was not how can I fix these schools, but what kinds of schools can we build by working together? I felt like DCPS, or I and my team, we had expertise, we had data, we had resources, but I also recognized that this community had expertise, this community had data. It might not be on a spreadsheet or in a PowerPoint deck, but they had data, they had resources. And in fact, when we put those two things together, that we actually came to better answers, better solutions for our young people. And so we started operating very differently than anybody else that I had ever seen in DC public schools. And by the time I became chancellor, I was my 10th person in the seat in the 10 or so years that I had been, 12 or so years that I had been in DC. But we decided that we would do everything with our community members. So people said, what's your strategic plan going to look like? And I was like, I don't have a strategic plan. We will co-create a strategic plan. And so our strategic plan for DCPS, we did with our community. When we had to make tough decisions like closing schools, we shared all of the data and information that we had with our community and then said, how shall we do this together? And our community came up with better ideas than we could come up with by ourselves. When we had to redraw the boundaries and feeder patterns for DC, which hadn't been done since 1968, right? Because when you start playing with, you know, what school you get to go to based on where you live, right? And people have bought homes based on where they want to send their kids to school, it gets a little dicey. But we were courageous and we did it because we needed to reallocate our resources, but we did it with our community members. We actually, in fact, we gave the problem to the community and said, how should we solve this? They came up with a bunch of solutions. We said, great, take that out to your community members and see what people think. And they got beat back. And I was like, whew, that's one community meeting that I didn't have to go to. But it made them come back and come up with new solutions. And we worked hard and then took that to our community and they signed off on it. Every big decision that we made, even the development of curriculum, we brought parents in to team with teachers. Every big decision that we made, every big strategy that we did it with our community members. And community members are not just adults. In fact, the most important community members, the community members who we got the smartest ideas from, were our young people. We were required statutorily to, at the beginning of every budget season, ask the community what they wanted to see in a school budget. And literally, it was the parade of the most interesting people in the city who would come and tell you, I want more of this, I want more of that, totally out of context, and it seemed like an exercise in futility to me. And I said, look, we're gonna do something different this year. We're gonna ask our students, we're gonna ask 2 students from every high school to come and tell us what their school community wants to see in the budget. They've gotta do the work, they've gotta make sure that they're polling their folks and come to the table, and it's just gonna be me and these kids. And these young people came with the most strategic, thoughtful budget decisions that were better than what my team had come up with. And so I learned fairly early on that if you want really, really good answers, the best people in the community to engage are kids, right? They're closest to the problem. They know what works in schools. They know what doesn't work in schools. And so we did that for 10 years. Great people, rigorous curriculum, engagement and partnership with the community. And we got big results. As I told you, when I started, DCPS was the lowest performing urban school district in the country. We had had 40 consecutive years of enrollment decline. Teacher satisfaction was at a low. Student satisfaction was at a low. We were churning teachers left and right. Only 25% of our kids were reading and doing math at grade level. It was a bit of a mess. When I left at the end of 2016, we were the fastest improving urban school district in the country as measured by the NAEP. Thank you. Wait, hold it. You'll be clapping all day. Fastest improving urban school district in the country. We saw 6 consecutive years of enrollment growth during my 6 years of tenure as chancellor, and DCPS's growth continues, enrollment growth continues, NAEP growth continues. In fact, this year, the country sort of flattened or went down on NAEP. Only 2 states, and one was Mississippi, whose state superintendent used to be my chief academic officer. And the other was D.C. and people will say, oh, it was the charters. In fact, charters went down this year and we went up. So the academic gains continue, enrollment gains continue. Our graduation rate is up. We retain 92% of our highest performing teachers. Student satisfaction is at 90%. And that's not in 2016 when I left, that was the case, but that continues now 3 years later. And they've had 4 chancellors since I left. So that tells you that it's not about the person who's at the top necessarily. It is about the deep, deep work of embedding good people all through this system, of putting good curriculum in people's hands and allowing teachers to learn how to master that curriculum, and your community continuing to hold you accountable. Because in fact, my successor got fired, not because the mayor fired him or the city council fired him, they wanted to keep him. But he had breached a community trust. And the community said, it's not what we want for our schools. When the community owns schools and is calling the shots, you're in a very different place. And that is what I'm seeing in my work all across the world. So I left DC Public Schools. I had to lay down for a minute because you were running 99 miles an hour, 9 days a week. So I rested a little bit, saw some friends and family who I feel like I hadn't seen for 10 years. Played around a little bit and tested a bunch of different options, but ended up in this international space in part because I wanted an opportunity to learn. I wanted to see what else was going on out in the world, and landed at Teach for All, which is a global network. If you know Teach for America, think Teach for Morocco, Teach for China, Teach for New Zealand, Teach for France, Teach for 53 different countries. And I lead the Global Learning Lab for Community Impact, which is a big fancy word to say I got a team of 6 people and we're trying to answer a fundamental question. Where do we see whole communities like DC where in fact on these test score gains, it's not some kids, it's not white kids, it's not wealthy kids, it's not charter kids. It is literally every kid in every ward, every subgroup seeing dramatic increases and improvements. What does it take for communities to move whole communities full of kids to transformational educational results? And you know what I'm seeing as I do my work in Haiti, as I do my work in Armenia, in Nepal, in India, the places that are winning, the communities that are seeing radical transformational change for their kids are doing the same thing that we were doing at DCPS. They make sure that they have the best people in their schools and around their schools. They're making sure that they're asking deep questions and trying to figure out how they bring rigor and joy to the curriculum. And they are doing this work with community. In fact, what the single most important thing that we see is communities deciding where they want to go together, lining up everybody who touches kids and saying, all right, you do this, you do that, you do the other, and rowing in unison towards a shared vision. That's where we see educational transformation happen. That's what we see happening in communities across the United States. That's what we see happening in communities around the world. And so what I came to tell you is that there are lots of really important ingredients. There are lots of really important people that are part of the solution around attaining excellence in education for kids. But there is something to this formula of great people, rigorous curriculum, and engaged communities, not just here, but literally all over the world. I'll tell you the final ingredient that people don't like to talk about, but I feel like, just like I'm real with you and telling you how bleary-eyed I am coming off this red eye and that I'm not reading the speech that I was supposed to read, I want to be very honest with you about what I think is a pretty significant factor. It's love. It's love. we have the incredible honor and responsibility of molding the next generation of leaders, leaders of our towns and communities, leaders of the world. That's our job. We are people developers, and we're developing people who literally are going to change the world, change their communities, and change the world. You don't do that because you think you're gonna win $100,000 along the way. You do that because you have a heart for people. You do that because you love young people. You do that because you see potential. And what I find in our field is that we've beaten the love out of education. We've beaten the love out of teachers. We've beaten the love out of superintendents. We've beaten the love out of, everything is transactional. Everything is whatever. Miss me with all of that. Every good decision that I made thinking, how can I see the beauty in that person? How can I help that person develop? How can we do something together? How can we change the world together? And I would submit to you that even more than great people, even more than rigorous curriculum, even more than engagement, is the real key. In fact, in order to engage with people, you gotta love people, right? Cornel West says, you can't serve the people if you don't love the people, right? Some of us in this industry don't actually love people. If you don't love people, you know I'm right. If you don't love people, go find another job. Because if you're gonna blow this job out the water, and that's what these kids deserve, you've gotta teach with love, you've gotta lead with love, you have to create apps with love, you have to do whatever you do with love, right? And what I've found is when you lead with love, you get a completely different result. And so, I think as you continue to meet people through this conference, as you go back to your jobs next week and things seem and feel and whatever, just remember that if I could get up here bleary-eyed from a red eye, if I could withstand, and not just withstand, but thrive in the superintendency for 10 years, if we could turn around the lowest performing urban school district and make it the fastest improving, because love undergirded it all, then each of you has every single thing that you need to be successful in your roles. Thank you, and enjoy the conference.
Thank you so much, Kyla. That was beautiful. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nat Seelan. I'm the executive producer here at the Learn Launch Conference. And that's really a hard act to follow. So I'm going to be really short. And I just have two quick announcements for you about some special things going on today. So for the very first time, we're hosting a Future of Work showcase. It's going to be in room 302, right next door. And in the Future of Work showcase, we've got, I think, 40 different tables of folks from community colleges, from employers, from nonprofits, from folks who are working to educate all of our learners for the economy of the future. It's a fascinating room. They've got presentations and a series of rotating conversations they're hosting too. And at 10 a.m., we're going to open that room with remarks from Massachusetts Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development, Rosalind Acosta, ASA CEO and President Gene Eddy, our own Jane Swift, and UMass Online CEO Don Kilburn. So that's at 10 a.m. in room 302. I highly encourage everyone to check it out. We're really, really excited about it. And then there's something else going on starting at 10:30, and it's in room 312. And I could tell you all about it, but in the spirit of what we just heard, I'd rather invite the students of Arlington High School and Tansy Elementary from Fall River to tell you what they're going to be doing in room 312 at 10:30. Come on up, y'all.
check, check. Good morning. We are from Arlington High School, and we are exhibiting infrared technologies at the Learning Innovation Showcase in room 312. Please come and check it out.
Yeah, so the Learning Innovation Showcase, or LIS, is from 10:30 to 12:45, and the 2 Ignite rounds are at 10:30 and 11:30. So be sure to be there.
Hi everyone, we're the Tansy Tigers from Fall River, Massachusetts. We're super excited to be here for Learn Launch 2020.
Come check out our student-led makerspace at Booth 12 at the Learning Innovation Showcase.
Don't be shy.
Come learn from us.